Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in just a few minutes in our Innovation and Tech segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames, we're joined by our regular contributor, Paul Caldwell, Chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames. And today he's joined by Jenn Cheng, co-founder at newchiccapital.com and genclub.com. Now, in celebration of Women's History Month, today we're chatting about female inclusion in tech and blockchain as we transition into Web 3.0. Currently, 42% of all U.S. businesses are owned by women. 13 million, in fact. Women-owned businesses employ over 9.5 million workers. Women are 3 percentage points more likely to start a business than men. Female entrepreneurship is also on the rise in developing countries. Between 8 million and 10 million small and medium-sized business enterprises across the developing world have at least one female owner. Now, outside of the agricultural sector, about a third of women around the world are self-employed in informal work. This tends to be home-based, small-scale, and focused on sectors like retail and service. Now, globally, only 1 in 3 businesses are owned by women, according to the World Bank. So, what is the solution? Well, inclusion is extremely necessary and part of the solution. And of course, our voice really does matter. We are the very pillars and backbone of our families and in many respects of society. Now, can men truly help us change this narrative? That is the golden question. Here today to chat women inclusion in the digital era are my amazing friends at hand, Paul Caldwell and Jennifer Cheng. Welcome to the show, my friends.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us. And thank you to Caldwell for sponsoring this segment for International Women's Day.
Of course, Paul is a big fan. Now, Jen, I'm going to start with you. Paul, thank you so much for coming back on.
Happy to be here, Zen. Thank you.
Okay. So, Jen, while the overall tech sector has repeatedly come under fire for its lack of gender diversity, the blockchain industry is somewhat trying to break out of that mold. Now, there's still lots and lots of work that needs to be done, of course. And CEOs of the largest metaverse platforms are still mostly predominantly men. But with STEAM, science, tech, engineering, arts, math becoming more accessible to girls at a very young age, the landscape of the tech industry will hopefully change to become more inclusive and inviting. Now, as a pioneer in the space, what steps have you taken at your company to ensure equality, inclusion, and more importantly, education?
Wow. First of all, that's a very loaded question. I'm going to press my 2-minute timer now, so I make sure I can keep it very pithy and on the point. But I think what you hit upon is on the nail. It's actually a very chicken and egg situation. We can't say, oh, look, finance and tech predominantly men dominated, and it's going to stay that way. So one of the things that I did to lean in as sort of a millennial female, identify as female, is to lead by example. So I do that. I'm a millennial mom of 3. I have 2 daughters and a son. And one thing I have had them all do from a young age, one thing I always leaned into is STEAM early. So I'm actually a concert pianist by training as well. And I think it's very important not only that my kids do things like Latin and coding ever since age 2. They've been doing all this because I think we need to be very future-proof for all the skills that we need as not just entrepreneurs and investors and creators and builders, because we're coming more and more with Web3. We're realizing it's a creator economy. And because of that, there's more and more women finding that, oh, there's a seat at the table, because typically we're known as more creative in some ways. We're known as like nurturing. We're known as teachers. So I think because of what we've had to deal with in the evolution of not just ed tech and tech and inclusion, because as a whole, as a society, we've had to realize, like even right now, as other generations are passing the baton to the next generation and next generation, I'm looking right now, you Generation Z and Zennials, right? It's really imperative that not only that we pass on the wealth, but we pass on the knowledge, the skills, and what I call learning, having that growth mindset and being able to continuously iterate and learn. So I think it's very important that all of us train up as, even if we're not entrepreneurs and investors, we learn to think on both sides of that coin and learn to build companies entrepreneurially. So that's what I'm trying to do at my companies, as well as our impact investments, by both direct and also in the fund managers that we are looking at, inculcating and empowering as well as ourselves.
Of course, thought leadership workshops, networking opportunities are crucial and effective catalysts to help pave the way, and providing that and the edutainment within a company infrastructure is extremely important. Now, Paul, you are a huge proponent of female inclusion in the workplace. You're the CEO of Caldwell Soames. You oversee a private fund as well as a public fund and often entertain Web3 related investments. How important is it for you as a CEO to have women in leadership roles, and how have women helped shape your business success?
I think it's a matter of just being open to best of breed, best of class, and whoever actually qualifies for any particular role, regardless of their gender. Um, I think that if you just do that on a merit basis, you'll find that women show up significantly well in that particular context. Because the one thing that's happening, and completely am in alignment with Jenn on this, I think it's about education. I think it's about empowerment. I think it starts in a family. I think that children, regardless of their gender in a family, should all be empowered to pursue their goals, and they should know that it's okay to dream, and it's okay to have big dreams and goals, and really want to reach out there and stretch. And I also find technology, whether it's Web3, okay, I get it. This is all the way of the way of the future, but the way of now in technology is such that it's quite empowering for young people to be able to use technology in ways that they can learn, in ways that they can get their message out. One of my dear friends, actually the wife of the godparents of my children, is a PwC partner, and her daughter has actually had a law changed when she was 10 or 11 in the state of Colorado in the US, because she just took it upon herself to say, if I want to have a business as a child, I shouldn't be subject to taxes on my business because I'm not 18. So I don't get the rights of an 18-year-old. I shouldn't have the responsibilities of an 18-year-old for my business to pay taxes if I own the company, which she did. And they changed the law, and it's in the state legislature, it's in the state legislative record that a young girl who's going to be an amazing woman executive, by the way, had a state law changed in the United States.
Brilliant. I mean, these are the types of things that we want to see more girls do. So I'm glad that she's paving the way. I'm going to just be mindful of the time and flip this to Jennifer. Now, we've been talking about tech, we've been talking about fintech, we've been talking about Web3, but as we enter this new era of digital transformation, with Web3 being the pillar of transparency and accessibility and equality, all of these check marks have been applied across many metaverse projects. And the foundations of these projects appear to be disproportionately, again, built by men. And in the past 5 years, metaverse companies led by men received a higher share of total entrepreneurial funding than metaverse companies led by women. In fact, 90% versus 10%. Men received $107 billion in funding compared to women who received only $5 billion. Now, these findings are based on the data of approximately 5,000 founders. Jenn, how do we change this narrative?
So one way we can change the narrative, for me, whenever I look at an investment deck, I make sure that I try to stack the odds. So because we're dealing with so many generations of basically women being left out of the conversation, let alone be allowed at the table, one thing I've tried to do is make sure there are women at my table. So if you look at my investment committee on New Chic Capital, if you look at our website, it's predominantly women. And that's and everyone there is there. They're like me, we're exited entrepreneurs. And in fact, my Web3 partner, I had a unicorn exit, which is how I was able to start my family office. And that company, which was in the e-commerce space, we actually not only had an M&A and IPO, it then, after I got married, I said, okay, I'm going to start my family office. We had this exit. She and my other partner were able to ICO that company and turn it into a company called crypto.com now. So I got into crypto kind of inadvertently, kind of natively, kind of accidentally. But one thing that I realized is that a lot of things are never by accident. So when I had my exits, what I started doing was I started making direct investments into impact investments where I think the needle gets moved for everyone. And I looked for diverse. If it was not women led, at least there were more than one founder. One of the founders needed to be a woman. That was one of my mandates. And I also started investing in a lot of fund managers. So not just hedge funds, Web3 funds, private equity funds, VC funds. They were largely my women. I'm a partner now also at 2 funds, private funds, my friends. One's a hedge fund, and she's doing phenomenally well and outperforming, because I think a lot of times women are outliers. People don't realize that we're actually like very, very competent. We're underestimated. And I think as long as we're looking at these metaverses, at these projects, because I say metaverse is actually an extension of communities. And if the community is kind of skewed, or people are saying like, oh, this is my NFT. It's no offense to the apes and other things, but they're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm gonna have like a sneaker that I'm gonna be using to, and I'm like, well, I'm not interested. My NFT, for example, I design jewelry to go with it. When they're talking about, oh, digital product, digital, I'm like, oh, you're talking about having a brand. Building brands, having Web 2 existed before Web 3. So I think as long as we keep our eye on the prize, which is inclusion, diversity, and making sure we're well represented, and that we're building quality projects, that Web 3 is not just going to be jargon, it's going to be actual new future infrastructure that we are doing to collectively bring ourselves to this future.
Yeah, exactly. Creating a more inclusive culture that supports and encourages women to pursue these careers in Web3 industry is extremely essential, and promoting gender diversity and inclusivity in the space is extremely needed to create this flourishing industry that we're all talking about. Now, Paul, financial technology, or more commonly called fintech, is a very forward-looking and disruptive force in the financial services industry per se. However, like many business sectors, it's struggling to disrupt one traditional norm, and that's gender diversity. Women make up only 37% of fintech employees, and according to Lendit Fintech survey, and the farther the further you climb up the corporate ladder, the fewer women you'll see. How are you changing this narrative again within your company, and how do we shift gears and get men to acknowledge women as true team leaders within the workplace, regardless if they're competent or not? Because to Jen's point, they're just not being treated as such.
I think you have to realize that there's a correlation between performance and value. And performance, if you put performance on one side of a chart, of a graph, and then on the bottom it's all about value. Of course, nobody would want to be in the bottom left box, right? You wouldn't want to have a low performing, low value person. So everybody looks at, well, just the high performance. So it's like, okay, so how about the person that's at the top of the performance, and all the way to the right, top performer and top value creator, right? I think really where the value proposition actually is, it's not in just the top performer with the low value, because you can find, if you ever follow Simon Sinek, he has a really wonderful way of articulating this. He talks about, you just asking the corporation, where's the jerk, and they just everybody points to the same jerk. And that might be the top performer from a numbers perspective, but nobody wants to work with that person. So from a strategic perspective, it's not close. So when you really get down into the value proposition, overall value proposition, you're going to find a lot of women. Safra Katz, who's the CEO of Oracle, I think she has really good things to say. I think there are some ladies that, Trisha Griffin at Progressive. Let me think. Best Buy, Corey Barry at Best Buy. The things that these ladies that run these big companies that are creating added market value, and these companies that are really growing nicely. Jane Fraser, Citigroup. What's the lady's name over at the UPS? Tomei. I think it's Carolyn or Carol Tomei, over at UPS, and even industrial companies that are really technology companies now with wheels, called car companies. They used to be mechanical sort of men companies, right? But look at Mary Barra and what she's doing at GM by bringing tech in and bringing blockchain into the, and being open to these things. So if women would just look at role models and find role models in these companies where women are making substantive changes to the overall value of the company in the strategic sense, it's not difficult to realize that there not only is a place for women, there is an absolute path that can get created for women easily equal to men if you just look at things based on the merits and you're not just looking for somebody to go golfing or drinking with on the weekend. And I think that really simply characterizes it. Just have to take out the division and take out the whole gender thing and who's the best person for the role. And companies and boards that understand that and that are bringing these ladies into the CEO suite in these companies are so thankful that they did. And it's not because it doesn't create a favoritism thing. That lady at the top, at UPS, who's the CEO of UPS, for goodness sakes, she doesn't look down in the organization and say, let me find the men to pluck away and put women in. That's not the point. The point is that what it does bring to the conversation and to the company is a degree of value that the company was heretofore not experiencing at the same level. The market responds to that. If you're a publicly traded company, you want to have these kinds of progenitors for new growth in your business that creates a sort of visibility by the markets, by the investors and the markets, so that you continue to grow your shareholder value. And I think
you said it. You should just write the book on reframing the CEO mindset to everything you just said right there. That's your treatment. That was incredible, because not everybody thinks like that, Paul. But thank you for saying that, because I'm glad it came out of spoken by a man, not a woman, because if we would have said it, it would have been perceived very differently. But hopefully these words resonate true to all those men out there in leadership roles, second guessing somebody's ability because of their gender. Well, we are out of time. Don't move a muscle. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on. Paul, so insightful chatting with you all the time.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Guys, you definitely have to check out the amazing Jenn Cheng. That was our innovation and tech segment, brought to you by Caldwell Soames. That was our regular contributor, Paul Caldwell, chairman and CEO. You can check out Jennifer's website. She's co-founder at New Chic Capital. Head to newchiccapital.com and check out her DAO at jenclub.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to our innovation and tech segment, brought to you by Caldwell Soames. We're chatting with CEO Paul Caldwell, chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames, and Jenn Cheng, co-founder at New Chic Capital and jenclub.com. Welcome back, my friends.
Hi, Jen. Thank you.
Welcome back, Jenn.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so this is our extended segment. Of course, this is for all our OTT, OTA, and 24/7 streaming platforms, Traverse TV, Kathy Ireland, and of course, Fintech TV. Now, community is at the heart of it all, especially when we talk about fintech and technology, and even more so Web3. And finding a supportive and like-minded network of professionals and peers is really important for all builders in the space. When you look at where we're headed with Web3, it really centers and thrives on community, to both your points earlier in the segment. Now, you can have a great product and tons of investment, but if you don't center your community, you won't go as far. Now, interestingly, according to the BCG study, the proportion of women who speak at Web3 and fintech conferences is 3 times higher than men, a statistic that suggests women are growing in visibility, especially in tech, which may be an important first step in achieving true equity across leadership and founder roles. How do women lead differently than men? Paul, you go first.
I think women, first of all, I think leadership is leadership when it comes to the corporation, to the business. I think there's some fundamental underpinnings that have to be adhered to for for the foundation to be there. Beyond that, though, I think there's a certain degree of value that female leadership brings to an organization. It's not a softening type of thing, but it is a balancing act, because it's simply it's a different perspective. It's a perspective that women can understand more so, without giving away or without giving up some of the tough decisions. Some of the decisions in a corporation are tough every day. There are always things that have to be made, and that's usually been in alignment with men, the tough man, not the soft woman, right? It doesn't have to be that way. If you take tough and you combine it with soft, you get value. And that's how I look at it. It's really simple, and it's not really about men or women per se. It's about a different perspective that simply a man simply cannot bring to a conversation, because he just doesn't look at the world the same way. He doesn't go through the same things. It probably, and I'm not a psychologist and I'm not an expert on this subject, it's probably not about that anyway, but there's just a certain flavor, a certain value, a certain type of environment that gets created when you have a well-diversified workforce, inclusive of women and men, and in leadership roles. Both should be there. It's just a much better organization. My experience is that.
You said it. A gentle strength is stronger. That's my takeaway. Jenn, how do women lead differently than men?
Oh, first of all, I want to build upon Paul's dichotomy of like soft and hard, because there's different kinds of leadership. Teddy Roosevelt used to say, walk softly but carry a big stick, right? One thing I think about women when it comes to the challenges I've experienced at leadership, and a lot of it was, sometimes I was actually the only woman in the room, or even at the conferences before people coined the term unicorn to mean billion-dollar company. I used to say, I'm like a unicorn. I'm like the only woman here, and people would agree with me. And I actually, before I moved to Asia, I was in New York. I built like a $10 million a month ad sales book of business, and then I thought, wow, it has to be more. And I went to Asia to get my MBA. And I think something about women is that we're hardest on ourselves. We're really hard on ourselves. So for me, while my brother and my sister-in-law, they were like, oh, my brother and I did Brown University together. He said, oh, we have an Ivy degree. I'm going to go to Harvard now for business school. And then I thought, oh, I have to go to that path. And then I realized kind of one way I could break through my glass ceiling and expand my horizons more was if I got basically a full scholarship to Hong Kong University of Science and Technology in Asia. So then I took that risk. So sometimes we as women, we're not known for taking risks. I went and took that risk. I was acting and modeling in New York. I was preparing for, I had started companies while I was in high school and college even. Earlier Paul's anecdote about, the little girl who changed law, I was actually campaigning for laws to be changed. I was, advocating for my mom to say like, hey, I don't understand why we developed this property. Why can't we, save more in taxes? I'm 12. I'm not 18. Why am I paying taxes? And then she's like, oh no, let's roll over into your Roth IRA. Let's do it on our IRA. I mean, I was learning about the investment principles really young. And I realized, again, leadership is about empowering leaders, not tearing them down. And I noticed sometimes as a woman, when I give my feedback, sometimes when a man is giving blunt feedback, when I'm giving the feedback, I'm saying like, look, if the product is not good enough, or the salespeople or the business development is not good enough, if you're not a builder, if you're not generating revenue, you're not generating investment, you're out, because it's a winter. It's a crypto winter. It's a Web2 winter, whatever kind of winter. And when I say things like that, people are like, wow, she's very harsh. She's like, that B word. But if a man says it, there's a double-edged sword. They'll be like, wow, what a competent young man saying very, and so that's why sometimes as women, we have this, we feel like, we have to be nice. We have to deliver the news, the bad news calmly. But I believe above all, we have to make rational moves, and we have to act as, proper business people as well as creatives, and really walk that fine balance. So I want to, also, talk about how what Paul just alluded to about that fine balance of being able to have different kinds of leadership. That's the best kind of leadership, when you can combine all those different kinds of leadership and leaders together and really propel us all together collectively in a very good way.
Amen, sister. You said it. Well, now we are officially out of time. That was an amazing segment. Thank you for being so transparent and honest, and really kind of giving us your take. Paul, always a pleasure chatting with you. I welcome you back anytime.
Hey, nice to meet you, Jen. Thank you.
Nice to meet you
Zen,
all.
a
I
pleasure.
look forward to discussing investment theses and philosophies with Paul, and also the best places to go in Asia, and hopefully seeing you both in US when I'm in New York soon.
Yeah, we're definitely we're gonna meet up for sure. Guys, you definitely have to check out both Paul and Jen. That was our innovation and tech segment brought to you by the gracious Caldwell Soames, one of our platinum sponsors here at iHeartRadio. That was our contributor, Paul Caldwell, chairman and CEO of Caldwell Soames, and Jenn Cheng, co-founder at New Chic Capital and GenClub.com. You can also find her on the gram at Jennifer Cheng LO. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.